Welcome to the Dynasty Sports Podcast. Cole, Jirik, Joey Blackmore here. Special guest, assistant AD, team makers executive, Derrick Lang. How are we doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys? I appreciate you guys having me on.
We're good. We've been on a little bit of a break here. I don't know what it's been, Joey. A few weeks, maybe a month since we've had a podcast here, but it's fun to get back at it. Fun to have you on here. Obviously, you played a lot of football snaps with both of us, and now you're in a little bit different role with NDSU. You want to just fill us in on what your role is now with them?
Yeah, so Team Makers is our annual giving program. So my main focus is fundraising, specifically for scholarships for NDSU. So we've got 16 sponsored sports at NDSU. So right around 400 student athletes. And so our main goal is to raise scholarship money for all those sports at NDSU. All of our sports are fully funded, as many scholarships as they can have. So yeah, our main objective is to raise all that money for scholarships for NDSU athletics.
And did you take over what Pat Simmers did in the past?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So Pat was in this position for 25 years, I think, something like that. And obviously
Forever.
Very well versed with NDSU, was a former football player there, student athlete, and then coached for a number of years as well. And then was down in Texas, I believe, as a high school football coach for a while, and then came back up and was a coach at Devil's Lake for a while, and then eventually found himself back at NDSU and did an unbelievable job. I mean, I can't say enough good things about him and everything that he's done for me to help me get through the transition. For taking over for someone who works in the same position for 25 years is never easy, especially when they do as good a job as Pat did. So yeah, he's been great to me.
Do you walk around with the drink tickets now?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
You do?
Yeah. Yep.
You always
Yeah,
do at any team maker event, go find Pat. He's going to have a couple free drinks for you.
That comes with the territory. Yeah. So we'll be distributing some tickets tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow we've got our second golf outing of the year here in Fargo. So yes, that is part of as duties as assigned. You bet.
Can you drink as much beer as Pat Simmers though?
Absolutely not. And I think trying to do that will get you in a lot of trouble.
I tried one time at a golf tournament.
He's one of a kind in many ways, and drinking beer would be one of those ways. He's something else.
So just strictly from the assistant athletic director part of your title, what does that all entail? Yeah,
so as I mentioned, our main focus every year is to get to the scholarship bill that we have, and that obviously goes up with expenses every year. But I serve on our senior staff as well, which is our upper level management, I guess you could say, within the athletic department. So our main objective, that we never try to get away from, is just providing the best student athlete experience that we possibly can for NDSU, and not only providing our student athletes with scholarships, but also putting all the tools in the tool belt for our coaches to go out and recruit the best and brightest student athletes that they possibly can at NDSU. And that's where, funding all of our sports to the top level comes in. I think if we can do that every year, Fargo, the community, our city speaks for itself. If we're giving our coaches everything they can to recruit the best and brightest, that's always our main objective.
And was this always your goal to get into this? Because I know for a while you were kind of into marketing, correct?
Yeah. No, I honestly, being a student athlete at NDSU, I really didn't know what I wanted to do until my probably junior or senior year. And Gene Taylor was who you guys know well as well, is one of my mentors and someone that got me interested in this business. And so I really didn't know. Eventually got to know Gene, and it kind of I've always had a passion for sports, but I just didn't know exactly what that entailed. So I always had that interest and that passion, and eventually, Gene talked me into the first step in getting involved in college athletics is being a grad assistant, much like in coaching as well. So I ended up getting a grad assistantship at Northern Illinois University, and really how I got started in marketing was I just needed a GA position, and so I took that position. It was in marketing. Did that for 2 years, and then there was a position that opened up here at NDSU within the marketing department, and I was really excited to have the opportunity to come back. So took that position in marketing for 2 years, I did a little bit of selling. It was kind of a unique role, and I strived in that sales aspect of that job. And at that point, in college athletic departments, we're always looking for ways to generate revenue. So it actually created a position for me at that point, the director of corporate sponsorships. I did that for 2 years, and really enjoyed that, being out there selling our product here at NDSU. And then it was kind of just perfect timing. Was kind of lucky that Pat was looking to retire, and this position came open, and they'd kind of asked me if I was interested, and absolutely, and said absolutely. My goal is to be an athletic director someday, so an opportunity for me to learn another side of the business, it was really a no-brainer to take this opportunity.
So you said that you guys, obviously your goal is to make sure that NDSU athletics is fully funded from a scholarship standpoint. What kind of steps do you take to go about doing that?
Yeah, I think it starts with the scholarships, and then obviously the ever-changing world of college athletics, you're able to provide cost of attendance as well. So when that became an opportunity, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, it might be longer than that now, we wanted to make sure, again, that we were going to provide our coaches with that opportunity, because that's obviously a big deal in recruiting. So we found a way to get that funded as well. So that's something we do here at NDSU. And then I think facilities are a big piece of that too in recruiting, as you guys know. And so that fits in with team makers to an extent too. We have that's not our facilities aren't our main focus, but we do have some involvement with that in helping the athletic department. So I think scholarships, cost of attendance, facilities are a big piece of that too. And we've got a lot of things we're excited about in the works in that aspect too.
Could you touch on what cost of attendance is? I think a lot of people are maybe confused on what exactly players get paid. Not numbers wise, but what kind of utilities or what things like cost of attendance covers?
Yeah, so that's anything above and beyond the room and board scholarships that student athletes receive. So that's money that they can use to fly home, buy groceries, take care of their vehicles, all those things that we didn't have, unfortunately.
Right.
But yeah, it's money above and beyond what the scholarship provides. And again, the idea behind it was again to give those kids. We've got a bunch of Florida kids here at NDSU. Give those kids an extra opportunity if they needed to fly home and see their family and do all those things. So.
And does that differs from school to school? How is that decided?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about it, honestly, in terms of, but it's a certain percentage, I believe, of depending what the value of your scholarship is, then that's how that number is determined. So depending on tuition, room and board, all those things, those numbers vary at each institution.
And then to go about raising all the money, you guys are holding, like you said, you're holding a golf event tomorrow. Is that yep. Kind of, that's where kind of most of it comes from, or is there other things that you guys do?
Yeah. At NDSU, a lot of the money that we raise is tied to football and season tickets. There's seat dues that are tied to each seat in the Fargo Dome. So there's the season ticket cost, and then there's also a seat due that's tied to that. And all those seat due dollars go towards scholarships. So that's a big one. But yeah, we do host a number of events throughout the year. Golf tournaments being one. They are a fundraiser, but at the same time, it's more about us just getting out and seeing our fans and thanking them for their support and being involved. We make a little bit of money off of that, but that's at the end of the day, that's not so much what it's about. Again, it's more of a thank you and just having fun with our fans. So we're in terms of revenue, very, very much tied to football, but we have plenty of donors that give philanthropically too, not receiving anything in return. And then we have our endowments as well that help us cover our scholarship bill too. So
has your golf game gotten any better over the hosting the tournaments here?
It's funny you ask that. Since I've been in this position, I've played more golf, but I tell you what, I don't know that there can't be a more frustrating sport out there. It's funny you ask that, because I golfed a couple times this past week. And the first day I played pretty good. And what I mean by pretty good for me is I probably got I don't know, 7, 8 bogeys. And then 2 days later, I go out there and I'm just absolutely terrible. I mean, I'm losing golf balls left and right. It's a humbling game, I tell you what. So to answer your question, no, I haven't gotten much better. If you have any tips, let me know. I'm taking them.
Well, I keep calling Grant and hoping that I can go hang out with Amy Olson and get the LPGA hookup here, because Grant supposedly thinks he's a good golfer now, but what doesn't Grant think he's not good at?
I tell you what, that's probably a good idea. I think I needed to take a lesson to get any sort of of decency. So no, I've played more golf. I'm not better.
The first time I ever golfed, Tim Polisak, he's telling me exactly. We all know Tim. He tells me the night before, come pick me up early in the morning. I'm going to take you to the driving range. I'm going to teach you how to golf. If you're going to be in the coaching profession, you got to know how to golf. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, Tim's a pretty good golfer. Like, this will be cool. So I'm driving him. He tells me to pull into a gas station. And then I see Coach Gazer, Coach Kleiman, Coach Klannerman. They're all sitting there, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? He goes, oh, yeah, by the way, you're going to golf in the Team Makers Scramble in Hawley, Minnesota today. I'm like, oh. So not only have I never golfed before, I'm now golfing with strangers, people I had never met.
Right.
Thanks, Tim.
As if, golf's not frustrating enough, and then you're nervous with the people behind you thinking, judging you.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So that was fun. Question for you, were you in Tim's group?
No, I was with like 3 other people I had never met before, using rental clubs that were way too short for me, and it wasn't a great first golf experience.
You know what?
That's
a pretty good crew out at Hawley, though. If you're gonna play in a tournament, that's a good place to be.
Right. Yeah.
Langer, let's throw things back here. Give us a little bio on you. You know, where you're from. Obviously when you met your wife, and how you ended up at NDSU. Who recruited you to NDSU, and talk about your career a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Wausau, Wisconsin, which is about 6 hours from Fargo. So the Twin Cities would be right in the middle. I played football, basketball, and ran track a little bit in high school. And then Tim, funny you bring Tim up. So Tim Polsek was the guy that recruited me, and really the biggest reason I ended up at NDSU. But I was a preferred walk-on. You know, I was looking at Minnesota Duluth or NDSU was kind of where it was the 2 schools that it was down for me. And it's interesting at that time, we are in a much different place today at NDSU than we were back then. As you guys know, I think they were coming off a 6-5 season as we were getting recruited. So it was a little bit different back then, but you could kind of just feel that things were headed in the right direction, and that was the right staff to get NDSU back to where we need to be. And so, Tim was really the biggest reason I ended up at NDSU. You know, he recruited me just as hard, I think, as he recruited anybody else. And then, no surprise too, he coached me just as hard as he coached any of our starters, DJ McNorton, Samuel Jury, all those guys. You know, didn't treat me any differently. So that's really the biggest reason I ended up at NDSU. But on a personal level, my wife and I are high school sweethearts, same hometown, and she came to Fargo with me. She's moved to Illinois with me. She came back to Fargo with me. So she's I tell you what, I'm one lucky guy, and we've got our son Griffin's just turned 11 months, so he's keeping us busy.
That's awesome.
Right. So let's just kind of talk about, I guess, really the past 7-8 months. You know, how has your job changed? What challenges have you had to face and overcome, and how have you guys managed?
Has something been going on the last 7-8 months?
I don't know.
Just thought it was just regular procedure. No, it's been crazy. I think, you know, it's been stressful in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. And I think we're fine. We're going to find that college athletics plays such a big role in all communities across the country. You know, the economic impact I think this is going to have is we're going to feel it, you know, for quite some time, you know, especially if we don't have any sports in the fall. I mean, you look at just Fargo, the impact that NDSU football has on our community with hotels, restaurants, bars, all those things are going to be affected if we're not playing home games in the fall. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. It's such a fluid situation for us. You know, things are changing rapidly and daily. What's true one day may not be true the next. And we're kind of right now in a holding period with what the Power Five does and from a scheduling standpoint. So yeah, the biggest challenge has just been, you know, trying to constantly communicate with our fans and keeping them informed as best we can without, you know, providing them information one day and then it changing the next. I think that's just been the biggest challenge, is just keeping everybody informed, but providing them with the right information. Because again, everything's changing so daily. And then obviously the biggest thing too that, you know, that's for me on the work side, but you feel terrible for our student athletes and our staff. You know, especially those seniors that obviously their season's affected. So that's the toughest part. You know, you lose the Oregon game and we've all played in those games. It's those are moments and opportunities that you'll never get again. And so for our kids not to be able to experience that is tough at the end of the day, but our main objective is to keep them safe and healthy and then make all decisions on their best interest. So it's been interesting. I mean, things are changing daily, and college athletics will probably be changed for a long time. So we'll see where it takes us.
Obviously, you know, winter championships were canceled, you know, with March Madness. I believe
Yeah.
wrestling championships were canceled. We then lost spring sports. How did that affect the athletic department? Just from the spring sports being canceled, and then what did you guys learn from that you're trying to? I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone expected it to roll into the fall. I know I didn't. But what kind of?
I certainly did.
Yeah, what kind of effect did the spring cancel have? You know, potentially from a budget standpoint too.
Yeah, you know, so the last competition we had was our men's basketball program beat UND in the Summit League men's championship. So they were headed to the NCAA tournament. So obviously, right there, huge effect, not only on our kids not being able to play in those games, but then financially too. The financial impacts of making that tournament. There are some implications when you get there and some revenue streams that we didn't receive and no schools received since the tournament didn't happen. So there was that aspect. In terms of our spring sports, you know, not a lot of people probably know it, but we've got one of the best softball programs in the country. I think we've won the Summit League, 12 out of 13 years or something like that. And we've got an awesome facility, one of the best facilities in the Midwest, in our softball complex. So their season obviously got cut short. I want to say they got a handful of non-conference games in, and then obviously baseball as well. So again, just feel terrible for those kids, for their seasons to get cut short. For us financially, not as many implications in the spring as there is in the fall. Like I mentioned, football is obviously a huge revenue driver, not only for NDSU, but for almost every program across the country. So these effects, these side effects will be different than they were in the spring.
How big of a hit will it be to potentially not have fans? Let's say by some miracle, we do get these 3 non-conference games, and I kind of want to touch on that, you know, after this, but, you know, financially, I mean, are we going to see big hits to other sports? Because, I mean, 20,000 people, whatever it is, 19,000 people, $50 a ticket, that's essentially like $1 million in revenue right there, plus parking,
Yep.
concessions, all that stuff. You know, NDSU is not a Power 5. We don't have $30 million a year from a Big Ten TV contract. You know, how does that look from an athletic department standpoint outside of just football?
Yeah, it's significant. I think, you know, at that point, if there are no games or no fans, everything will probably be on the table. And we've had those talks. I think everything would be on the table. I don't know that at NDSU we would do everything possible, you know, to avoid any of our sports being affected. But the reality is they probably will have to look at their budgets and see how they can cut some things, maybe that they don't need because they weren't traveling anymore, or because they can't go out and recruit. Can you cut a little bit out of your recruiting budget or your travel budget? So we're, from a senior management level standpoint, we're looking at all those things, and our business office will be meeting with those teams, especially with our fall sports and the summer league canceled. Those seasons are postponed them to the spring. So we'll look at all those things on what can we cut from those budgets for this year and moving forward that we don't maybe necessarily need. And that goes for every department. That goes for our sports, our administration, everybody. I think if everyone can look and eliminate any expenses they can, that'll be better for the whole group, and you avoid having to do anything drastic moving forward.
Right. I think they should probably just cut that nutrition bar and go back to the old cereal bar we used to have with
the Cheerios and blueberries and bananas.
Cut a little money out of that to get it back to the old days.
A couple bowls quick before you have to weigh in.
Right.
When it was like
bloated for workout.
But it was like you were eating and losing weight at the same time, because it was like 120 degrees up there. So it was the best of both worlds.
Yeah, the bars were rusting as you were trying to do lifts, and you're dropping them on top of the athletic director's head because for some reason they built the weight room on the second floor. That was probably a little overdue.
It was funny. This is a little bit off topic, but someone was asking me about the Kansas State game the other day, and it kind of jumped my memory in terms of, I just remember drinking that Gatorade and how much salt was in there. Just bad stuff. I mean, obviously helped us, but someone brought that game up the other day, and it just sparked my memory of how salted down that stuff was.
I don't know what was worse, the salted Gatorade for the Kansas State game or Cotton Eye Joe on repeat 45 times during a workout for Montana State. That was pretty brutal as well.
That weight room, man, that was something else.
I'm glad you guys got the money and to get the upgrade there. That was definitely needed. But like
it's
you said,
funny that
it's crazy.
Kmart was an upgrade from the BSA. Like the makeshift grocery store workout. How long did we work out there? Was it a year?
Yeah, at least.
I think it was a couple or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was close to 2 years maybe. But that was a nice setup. I'd only been in there once, but they had a lot of room in there.
Yeah, it was huge.
You actually had room to run your full sprint before running into a wall or running to the old academic center, and it wasn't 1,000 degrees.
Right, running 40
nice.
Running 40-yard dashes on literally a 40-yard turf. There was no room to slow down.
None.
So how much of this did you guys predict as far as, let's just say 2 weeks ago? Obviously NDSU started practice last Friday, the 7th. It's now Tuesday, the 11th. I know they took that Saturday off because everything was up in the air, but now they're back at it. They practiced, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They practiced today. But 2 weeks ago, did you guys kind of anticipate this happening? Obviously the Big Ten and the Pac-12 just postponed their season today. Yep. Where was your guys' mindset from that standpoint?
2 weeks ago, I can only speak to myself personally. At this point, 2 weeks ago, I don't know that I would have thought it would have gotten to this point. I think obviously the Mid-American Conference canceling their season had some sort of ripple effect. I think as they learn more, there's concerns, long-term concerns about the heart and the effects that this virus has on that. And I think that's playing a huge role into where we are today. I think the amount of risk and the unknown, I think, is really what is concerning for the student athletes. So no, I wouldn't have guessed that we would be here 2 months ago. I wouldn't have guessed it. 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have guessed it. But again, things are changing so rapidly and daily. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Speaking of the MAC, we all probably, Cole and I, we got a couple moles on the inside, of the NDSU football program, but we heard that there was a very, very high possibility that NDSU would have played a complete MAC schedule. Obviously, then they end up canceling their season. But we heard that it came down to like a last minute vote potentially. And, that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think we can certainly compete in that league. I don't think there's any question about that. I think there's probably a lot that goes into that. I think that would probably take a presidential vote for us to be able to do that. And I don't know that they would be willing to do that because there's a pretty good chance we'd win the thing.
That's what I heard happened.
I can't imagine that they would be too pumped up about having the Bison in their league for 1 year, because that very well could happen.
Right.
I think we would have won the MAC if we would have played a MAC schedule this year. And this offense with Trey Lance leading it is pretty explosive. It's insane.
We would have had a really good chance. Yeah, I heard those rumors as well, but I think there would probably there'd be a vote involved in that from the presidents and commissioner and all that. I can't imagine too many people would be too pumped up to have the Bison in their league.
They don't see a lot of A-gap power in that league.
No, I don't think so. No. Right. Spread them out a little bit. Yeah.
Where do you think that, this, obviously we can't predict what's happening, right? I mean, again, we said it how many times now, no one really expected this. Do you think that this has any effect on the Power Five potentially breaking off into its own realm? Because it's pretty clear that, and I get that a lot of these conferences, it's the presidents are voting to postpone it. It's not really the NCAA but there's a clear lack of leadership at the top of the NCAA, in my opinion. Just the inability to make a decision, and to continue to postpone it like a week. Like if they would have just done this 2 months ago, like, hey, it's all going to be canceled or postponed, guys, then we would have had time to, actually maybe come up with a pretty good plan rather than having to throw it all together from a Saturday, 4 days ago to hopefully next Saturday. You know what I mean? And then
I feel most bad for I think that's hardest on the student athletes. I think just the unknown and going back and forth. I can't even imagine what that would be like, especially if you're a upperclassman or it's your last season. I think just having a little bit more time to grasp that, but for us to get to this point, I feel most bad for the kids in that aspect. But to answer your question, I think the Power Five probably breaking off was going to happen regardless, but I think this might just speed it up. Just like a lot of things, I think. I think you look at some other athletic departments throughout the country that have already cut some of their programs. I think some of those schools, that was probably in their future plans, and this just sped it up and made it happen even faster. I think potentially the Power Five breaking off and doing their own thing, I think it's the same thing there. I think it was probably going to happen, and this will just probably make it happen even sooner.
Right. And if that is the case, I mean, is it safe to assume there will be no more FCS? It'll be the Power Five, and then it'll just be Division I football, and the Missouri Valley will be playing against the MAC and for a title, and now the MAC, the Mountain West, some of those other conferences where if you do go undefeated, you're still not going to get in the four. We saw that with Central Florida 2 years in a row going undefeated, not getting their opportunity. It just seems to me like it makes more sense. And then all this kind of sparked with the whole idea that NDSU might be playing a MAC schedule. And then you're really thinking, well, they're probably going to win the MAC. I mean, obviously you still got to go out there and win the games, but on paper, I mean, they're the best team with 20 less scholarships which is just saying something. But
no, I think you're correct. I think the FCS and the MAC and Mountain West will all be kind of at the same level. Potentially, or if there's a level underneath the Power Five, and then you still have your FCS, I guess that could be a possibility too. But in my opinion, I would see the Bison and NDSU that we're in that next tier with the Mountain West, the MAC schools. That's where we're gonna fit in And I think from an athletic department standpoint, that's what, our goal is when some movement happens, let's make sure NDSU is ready to make that moves and is in a position to be really successful and to compete with those schools. Because the reality is especially from a football standpoint, those are the schools we're recruiting against. And so when that change does happen, if it happens at some point, we need to be ready to fit right in. And I think we do. Our facilities speak for themselves. The way we fund our programs already speak for themselves. I don't know that there's a whole lot of schools in the MAC that provide cost of attendance. There probably are a handful, but I'd be surprised if they all do. So yeah, we need to make sure we're ready when and if that does happen, that we're ready to be right with those schools.
I think this university has great leadership with Ensign and then Larson at the top of it, and they're pushing for this program to go to the highest level, go play at the highest level, and be where they belong. And it's awesome to see this coaching staff, this administration, not be scared to ask questions, take risks. And I know there's a ton of former player chats that go on all the time. A lot of guys like, let's just move up, let's go play Big 12. It's like our budget doesn't quite fit that. But I think if the Power 5 does break away, we probably jump into a MAC type conference, and I think that'd be a ton of fun to see some different teams in the Fargo Dome. And I think we got the leadership to do it. And hats off to you guys, Langer, for doing some awesome stuff. No,
absolutely. We've got, like you said, we've got unbelievable leadership. I'm biased, but I think Matt Larson's the one of, if not the best athletic director in the country. He's one of the best leaders I've ever been around. I've learned a ton from him. He's always concerned about what's the best move for our kids, what's the best move for NDSU, and nothing else. And he's a phenomenal leader, a phenomenal athletic director. And I think Coach Entz was a perfect fit, and is perfect timing, perfect fit for NDSU. And obviously his first season speaks for itself. 15, 16-0, whatever they were, how many Coach of the Year honors he had, and he put together a phenomenal staff. I can't say enough great things about the staff he put together, and so they've done a phenomenal job, and he was a perfect fit for NDSU at this time, and is doing a great job. So we're excited about the future, and he's very attention to detail. So again, he's great.
Right. And I think the biggest thing that, like Cole said, there's always, former players talking, and about us moving up is we can't move up unless the Power 5 breaks off, because no one wants to go to the Mountain West and not be able to compete for a national championship. That's the biggest thing, is as long as there's the ability to play for a national championship, a conference championship at the end of the year, then I think everyone would be for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe don't, which is fair. I think a lot of people don't realize the discrepancies between some of those schools' budget and ours, and how we are very self-sufficient. There are other states that provide a little bit more funding maybe than North Dakota does for our higher education. So we're at a little bit of a disadvantage there, but we've, again, done a really good job, and they've always done a good job at NDSU of being self-sufficient. So there is a big discrepancy in those budgets, which can be a challenge. But again, if and when the Power 5 moves on, we're going to fit right in there with all those schools.
Right. So the Missouri Valley, they postponed their season. It's going to be an 8-game conference season sometime in the spring. Is that supposed to be around March? Is that when they start?
Yeah, I believe they're shooting around the end of March.
The end of March for the first game, and then they're probably starting camp at the beginning of March. But in the meantime, we do have – everyone in the Valley has the ability to play 3 non-conference games that will not affect any eligibility. That's correct? Accurate?
Yep. Yeah, so each institution within the Missouri Valley has the discretion to go out and play non-conference games if they would like. And at NDSU, we're going to do everything we can to get 3 non-conference games. Will it happen? We don't know. Again, we're kind of in a holding period with the Power 5 and what those schools end up doing, because at the end of the day, if they decide they're not playing, chances are nobody's going to be playing football in the fall. So no, I know our Matt, our athletic director, has talked with our student athletes and gotten their feedback, and our kids want to play. You know, they've been, as you guys know, working their tails off all summer, all spring, and so they want to play football, and they've been preparing to do that. So again, do everything we possibly can. Not going to leave any stones unturned. Ask as 1,000 questions. Call as many schools as we can, and hopeful that we'll have those 3 non-conference games.
I'm hearing that there's a Saturday deadline kind of a deal. You know, at the end of the day, there's got to be some sort of a deadline to these games. You know, we've heard, you know, Army said no, South Florida said no, Coastal Carolina said no. You know, those are conferences that haven't canceled yet. Yeah. What conferences are available still? Cole, I feel like you always know these kind of questions.
Yeah, really Cole would probably be able to answer that better than I would, honestly.
Yeah,
I think the Southland is still pretty interested in the SoCon. You know, you get in the South, they want to play football. You know, the SEC, it looks like it's going to play this year. Notre Dame, you know, and is playing with the ACC. They seem pretty determined to play this year. So I think if you look maybe down in the Big South, the FCS conference, Big South, SoCon, Southland, maybe you could find somebody out of there. I doubt Sam Houston State wants to come back to the Fargo Dome. It's been pretty rude to them up here, but you know, maybe you can find one of them, maybe one of the MEAC schools. If you know, I think it comes down to if you can have fans or not. If you can't have fans, maybe if you could sell it at a pay-per-view. I mean, Joey, you and I each pay $60 to watch a fight on Saturday. You know, I'd pay $100 to watch a Bison football game right now. Get that pay-per-view money rolling in there. But you know, I think the chances are limited. Maybe Montana's will come play us. You kind of got to look at spots that make sense travel-wise, and we're pretty isolated up here. You know, maybe one of the Dakotas would play us. I'd love to beat up on the Bunnies, but they sounds like they already gave up on the season. So I think options are limited. But man, you know, obviously there's a lot of talk today about Nebraska. They want to play. NDSU really wants to play. That'd be almost a dream matchup. I'd love to see us take on the Gophers. They got all this hype this year. I'd love us to go beat up on the Gophers, but I doubt that'll come to fruition for me.
Have they have the Gophers said what they're gonna? Are they gonna pursue a season still, or?
I think they were one of the Big Ten members that said they wanted to postpone. I think it was just Iowa and Nebraska. From
Iowa and Nebraska is what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I really don't see the spring season really happening. I think that's too much to ask these players to play an 8-game season, and especially if they don't run it sounds like Division II, Division III might not even run their championships. You know, if FCS doesn't run theirs, there's no point of playing that conference schedule. You just unfortunately get ready for the next year, and I don't know what happens with senior eligibility, and you kind of move on, and it's a wash of a year, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because we'll need at least 50% of the eligible teams in the FCS to have that championship in the spring. So obviously gives us a chance, hopefully, but I guess we'll see where that all ends up.
Yeah. I mean, North Dakota State's in, a pretty decent spot as far as actively looking to pursue a game. The problem is with, some of these D2 schools that, they don't have, we're talking about our good friend Carleton, who's right across the river at Morehead State, and they haven't been told that they're not playing yet. I mean, their championship got postponed, but Bemidji State, who's in their conference, they're practicing right now. And to just the leadership again from the NCAA, it's pretty silly, really. But when you look at a spring season potentially for some of those schools, I mean, you're practicing in the beginning of March. They don't have a bubble. They don't have the Fargo.
It's gonna be a little bit cold.
It's gonna be pretty brutal, and just the idea that there's so many unknowns, and we've talked a lot about budget issues, at North Dakota State. Now, I mean, it's gonna affect the smaller schools really, really badly. It's just gonna be it's very interesting to see how this thing's all gonna play out.
Because they, I would assume for Morehead and the NSIC, they've moved all their conference games just like we have to the spring.
They haven't announced it yet.
Okay.
I was just talking with them today because I knew we were going to get on here, and I was like, give me an update, fellas. And they were like, technically practice is still scheduled. We just postponed it, but. Because
those schools too, they don't, in that conference, they don't play many, if any, non-conference games, correct? They're all
no, because there's 2 teams just left, so there's 14 now, 14 conference teams. So they don't have a non-conference.
Right. So
it'll be interesting, but I mean this impact is going to be huge. Obviously, a loss of fans doesn't affect Moorhead State a ton. I would know from experience, but it's still going to affect. I mean, that little bit, getting 2,500 people there, I mean, that's going to affect everything. And who's to say that there's going to be fans in the spring, and then just to go back to your point, Cole, I mean,
who's to say there's going to be football in the spring?
That's exactly right. I mean, it's a ton of unknowns, but let's say there is. And Cole, back to your point, I mean, they're going to play 8 conference games in the Missouri Valley, and then go play 4 FCS games. Hopefully they make the playoffs and are fortunate enough to continue to do what they've been doing. And then they turn around and, all right, fellas, strap it up in 3 months.
And that'll be interesting too. I don't know too much about it, and Cole, you might know more on. I would assume the playoff bracket will be abbreviated somewhat. It's at 24 now. Do you go down to 16? Do you go down to 8? It started at 16, I think. So that'll be interesting too.
Yeah, they haven't said much on it. I think you'd have to go, in my opinion, go to 8. Take the top 8 teams. I think 24 is a little egregious anyways. I mean, there's conferences that don't need a bid. I mean, we don't need the 3rd team out of the South, Southland Conference. We don't need a Pioneer League team. Awesome that they have Division I football, but we don't need the 6th team out of the Big Sky or the 4th team out of the Missouri Valley. Give us the top teams. Give us the Montanas, the Eastern Washingtons, JMU. Give us and NDSU out of the Missouri Valley. The rest of them can stay home. So I'd love for 8 to cut it down a little bit, get it going towards the championship a little bit faster. But we'll see. I hope we just get to see a little bit of football at some point.
Right.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. Just crown whoever wins the Valley as the national champion.
Just give us our trophy.
Who's gonna love this fall? I can't even imagine the NFL will be all over the prime time Friday night, Saturday night time slots.
Oh, yeah.
I would think.
Have to. I think if there's no college football, we'll see. I think the SEC will do something. ACC will do something. They'll probably eat up Friday nights, Thursday nights, Saturdays. But I think for sure you're seeing Saturday nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday NFL games. That way they can manipulate their schedules and be flexible as well. And
I was talking to someone the other day, and I was like asking the question of, do you know anyone that doesn't like college football? Because I'd love to ask him, what do you do on a Saturday in the fall?
Go to Pumpkin Orchard or Pumpkin Patches.
I don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh, yeah. Man. I think there might be a lot of happy wives this fall at their husbands tailgating and showing up at 3 a.m. and coming back home after a trip to Chubb's or something.
That's for sure.
Or they're going to find out my husband's really got a problem. And it's not just him going to tailgate on Saturday. Now there's nothing to do, and he's still doing it, which could be a real issue.
Oh man,
yeah, that's gonna be a bigger problem for her.
We got to throw in the 2013 Kansas State tape. We'll play that on loop. We'll head to Hurtin' Horns playing on loop there, and we'll cheer it on or something.
Langer, did you see that? Colton Hegel told me this. I didn't fact check him. I guess I'm taking another Wisconsin native's word for it, but I guess the Green Bay Packers.
I'll take this with a grain of salt.
Yeah, apparently the Green Bay Packers already announced the first 4 games will be with no fans. First 4 home games.
I was actually back in Wisconsin last week, and my wife's parents are season ticket holders for the Packers, and I heard the first 2 there are no fans, okay. But that might have changed. It could be the 4. I know the first 2 games for sure.
Yeah.
How weird is that going to be?
Anything's going to change in a month.
Yeah, that's going to be.
And weird. I mean, you think about the effects there too. You think about like an Aaron Rodgers. Well, his hard count becomes irrelevant now.
Right. That's going to hurt us.
Yeah.
Cole likes it, but us Packer fans.
Hey, so, he's leading us this year.
It'll just be really interesting. I mean, you guys played the game, especially I think in the NFL, the crowd, the effects that it has on momentum and motivation to an extent. I mean, it'll just be, it'll be really weird for those guys.
Yeah, we obviously practice with crowd noise, on Thursdays, sometimes Wednesdays, before playing in the Fargo Dome or places with noise. So, I mean, you could pump noise into places, but still practicing the Fargo Dome with that noise, it's awkward. I think the most awkward part it has to be like coming out of the tunnel. If NDC comes out of the tunnel, there's just nobody there. Like, I don't know, that would just be weird to me. I wouldn't want to do it probably.
And that's some of the questions you ask too from administratively too. It's like, so if you don't have any fans in the stands, do you still have like the fireworks and stuff? Because that's really a fan experience element. If there's no fan, and this not just NDSU but across the country, do you do that type of stuff if there are no fans? I don't know.
It's going to be wild. I know that it's different when you watch the NBA. It's not as that's not as a fan orientated sport. But it's interesting if you watch like UFC fights. I mean, when they're coming out to no crowd, I'm always wondering, I mean, how is this affecting them? I mean, it's obviously a lot different. They're going into a steel cage to fight another human. But I mean, you got to be a different cat to do that to begin with. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Lang, there's maybe a budget cut right there. You just created no fireworks.
I mean, and who knows? I can't get into, and I'm not a huge baseball fan to begin with, but I don't mind watching it. It's still weird to me watching with no fans in those empty major league field and stadiums. I don't know. I can't get into it for some reason.
Yeah.
Weird.
Lang, do you think Tyler Rowe will struggle a little bit this year if he has to call plays without fans yelling at him to throw the ball or run the ball? I don't know how he's going to adjust without the fans.
There's usually 10,000 other coaches in there telling him what to do. So I'm sure that would be a little bit weird. Yeah.
Not gap screen again. Come on.
Power's not working. And then it busts for 70 yards. Oh, that's a great play call.
I tell you what, he did a great job last year too. Just changing things up and giving all those different looks and shifts and formations and that helps when you have the weapons that you have too, right? But he did a great job.
Joey and I talked about it a little bit, and we're like, man, how do you stop that offense? We're like, talking about our team in 13. I'm like, whew, there have been some mismatches and some situations where we're like, I don't know if we would have stopped him in some situations. That offense is nasty, and the way Roll called the offense was so good. I mean, that's probably the best offense, and this year I think would have been the best offense NDSU maybe has ever had.
Yeah, and I mean, when you've got a quarterback that's as dual threat as Trey is, our offensive line is what it is. It seems like they just reload there. In terms of defending our offense, I mean, especially with Trey, again, his abilities, where do you start?
The formations and everything that's the biggest difference from now to when you were a senior. Obviously our offense was good back then, but it is so much more difficult to defend now when you add that quarterback. And as soon as Polisek, we keep bringing Tim up. I feel like we always talk about Polisek on these podcasts. But as soon as he came back, has he
ever watched this?
I don't know. I doubt it. He'd probably be calling me, screaming at me, telling some stories I've been telling about him. But as soon as he came back from Northern Illinois and he took all that Jordan Lynch QB run game, and I mean, it became a nightmare to defend them during fall camp and spring ball. I remember we would be sitting up in that office just trying to figure out, okay, they just traded to unbalance. Like, they didn't jump to unbalance because that's easy. We'll just recall it. I think Andrew Bonnet actually messed it up. He was supposed to jump to unbalance, and he just stepped off the ball, and we were like, oh, well, we can't. Now what do we do? It's remarkable to watch. It's so fun. If you really know football, there isn't a better offense to watch in the country.
Because in theory, you should be if you're the defense, you're always going to be a guy short, at least, right? I mean, in terms of defending all that stuff, and I don't know a lot about defense. You guys obviously know way more than I do, but it's got to create a problem. I'd imagine.
It creates, so you have to adjust to it. But the issue is now they trade to it, so they just step the guy off and then they motion him and then they could motion him back. So you don't really know how to defend it. We saw that the only team that we saw do it was Sioux Falls at Moorhead State, and they hung up 55 on us, I think. One of our 3 losses that year. But yeah.
That's what's different about NDSU too, is the complexity of our offense and defenses too, right? I mean that's why I think you see a lot of these kids going pro, and it's not as big of a transition probably. And Cole, your roommate, could probably speak to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, Kyle obviously played plenty of years in the NFL, and he's like, it wasn't that big of a transition. The biggest thing for him was going from defensive end to linebacker and learning things.
Right.
But, you having to think, Derrick.
Oh, come on now.
As the defensive end that Cole was, he didn't have to think a whole lot.
Well, you watch Carson Wentz on Sundays. He's running plays he ran at NDSU. They're taking some of those concepts. That helped to win a Super Bowl, some of those concepts he took from here. But defensive end is the hardest position to play on the field, Joey, just so you know.
You got to be in the best physical condition, right? It's just
exactly.
And
the pattern test we had.
Plus, it's like algebra every play too, right? You got to be able to.
If you have athletes like Mike Hardy out there, it's pretty much. It explains itself right there.
I actually, funny you bring him up too. I just saw him a couple weeks ago. He was at one of our golf tournaments.
He's in the insurance world now. He must be a good golfer at this point. All he does is golf. Him and Hegel, insurance life seems pretty easy for these guys.
I don't know about that. I think he was their handicap player. He was playing with, and everyone needs one of those, right?
Yeah.
He was playing with Ryan Smith, so I'm guessing Mike was probably the worst player in that group. But
Ryan's a good golfer. I've golfed with him a few times. He makes us look silly. But when we wrap things up here, Derrick, the last kind of question we've asked a lot of the guys here is, obviously being a player and now in administration, maybe it has a little bit different meaning. But what does Bison pride mean to you?
Yeah, I think first off, I think. I owe NDSU NDSU did more for me than I did for it. I think it's helped me get to my career today. But in terms of what Bison pride, means to me, I think the first thing that comes to mind is being a great teammate, working your tail off. I think if you do those two things, you're going to be put in position to be really successful at NDSU. Because if it's about you, you won't make it. And how many guys did we see during our time? Not that there was a lot, but there were a handful that if it was about them, they didn't make it. And you just look at this most recent decade of success. You don't have that when it's about one guy. These kids are graduating every 3-4 years. We've just kept reloading, and the next one quarterbacks learn from the next, and the next guy's taught the next guy. And that is a program. That's culture. And so, yeah, those are kind of just some of the points that come to my mind. And, especially for me being a walk-on, I had a different perspective. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you work your tail off, it's not about you and you're a great teammate, NDSU is going to set you up for success.
Love it. Absolutely. Appreciate it, Derrick. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
No, I appreciate you guys having me. It's good to catch up with you guys. And if there's ever anything else we can do, I'd certainly be willing to hop on. So appreciate you guys having me.